Before we start this episode, I want you to try and draw a few connections between some seemingly unrelated topics. What does a reality TV show have to do with a wildly successful writing course designed to help first responders and veterans heal from trauma? What does a passion for music have to do with revolutionizing an events business? What does a week at the gym, being sore from head to toe, have to do with changing an entire business model? Are you seeing any connections? Probably not right now. But all is going to be revealed in today's episode with my very special guest. Today we are talking about the power of curiosity. Hey there, it's Susie here. Welcome to the show. Inside of each of us, there is a spark of curiosity, a desire to know why things work, how they work, or an interest in random niche topics. And these might be topics that seemingly have nothing to do with your business. Maybe it's a TV show that you've been really into at the moment. Maybe it's a band you just rediscovered that you used to love. Maybe it's a new interest in gardening or pickleball, or you've gotten really into the various brands of canine toothbrushes. That desire to learn, that desire to know, no matter how trivial or bizarre the topic, is inside each one of us. And while most of us put aside these stray thoughts and interests as distractions or procrastination or something to think about when we're not working, what if embracing that curiosity actually leads to us having a more fulfilled and creative business life? What if pulling those threads actually makes your business more profitable and more able to serve your ideal clients? Our guest today is all about embracing curiosity and bringing creativity into our daily lives. And if you're already thinking, oh, I'm not creative, this isn't for me, keep listening. Our guest believes that leaning into your interests, no matter how bizarre they might be, and trusting your gut can actually produce an outcome in your business that you would never have expected. My guest is the phenomenal Valerie Khoo, CEO and founder of the Australian Writers Centre, an accomplished artist and a very dear friend of mine. Now, on top of being an award-winning feature writer, she's also become known for her work around curiosity culture and why bringing in curiosity and creativity into our lives can benefit us deeply. But not just us, our businesses, our clients, and even our teams. I cannot wait for you to hear this conversation. So let's now welcome Valerie onto the show. Hey, Valerie, welcome.
Great to be here, Susie, as always.
I'm so excited about this conversation about curiosity because as a business owner, and I know there's lots of people listening who are in the same boat, we tend to keep our core business and tasks in one part of our life and our creativity separate. And we think of creativity in the traditional sense as something that happens in our spare time, on weekends. But you have great evidence about what can happen when we bring our whole selves into our business. Can we speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in following your curiosity, especially because it leads to incredible creative breakthroughs in your business. And these are potentially things that affect your bottom line, positively in general, but also affect the way you approach business and your attitude to business. So I think that really embracing a culture of curiosity in your life, but especially in your business, speaking to this audience, is absolutely essential, not only, as I said, for your business, but for your soul.
Can you talk a little bit more about what do you mean when you talk about curiosity?
I think that often when we are in business, we are given templates to follow. We are given formulas to use. We're given a set strategy that to succeed online, you need to do A, B, C, D, E, that sort of thing, right? And those things are important and they make sense, and that's great. It's very, very useful to have structure and to follow a structure. But sometimes we're so busy following frameworks and structures that we ignore that thing inside us that is actually telling us to look at something or to explore something or to investigate something. Or it might not even be as big as, oh, you must investigate this. It's just this little nudge that piques your interest, and we might think, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting, but I'm just going to squash it now because I'm busy following the strategy, right? And the danger is that we're so busy following this strategy, which may or may not suit us, or maybe only the certain bits suit us and other bits shouldn't. I think it's very, very important to listen to that call, to listen to that nudge or itch or whatever you want to call it, that is saying to you, hey, you're kind of interested in this, no matter even though that thing might just be bizarre, like you think that's got nothing to do with my business. Hear it and pay attention to it, because it's there for a reason, and it can potentially lead you to something that is going to lead to something better in your business or in your life.
This is a really interesting point of view, because we choose what we do as a business, how we're going to show up, who we want to identify as, who we want people to see us as, and we kind of stick to that. We want to be congruent and consistent with what it is that we say we do and how we present to the world. However, when something that comes in, something that is curious, how do we know if that thing calling us isn't just a bright, shiny object?
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, it's you don't know initially, but you don't have to go down the massive rabbit hole. You just allow yourself to start researching it, or allow yourself to Google it, or allow yourself just those first steps into it, and you will know immediately, or very soon after anyway, oh, okay, that's not for me, and then you move on, and that's okay. Or it might lead you into another direction. And so I think that it is okay to go down the rabbit hole. I think that going down the rabbit hole is good, because potentially it can lead you to something amazing. Now, the danger is if you go down the rabbit hole and then all you do is scroll TikTok randomly and end up there. But if you're sticking to the thing that led you down the rabbit hole in the first place, I think that's a good thing. But if you've gone down the rabbit hole and you're just watching random YouTube videos, then that's on you, right? You should have the self-discipline to know the difference.
Can you give us an example, either from clients you've worked with or from your own experience, where you have had that curiosity pop up? It felt irrelevant to who you were as a business owner, but you followed that path and something perhaps even major has changed?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm the CEO of the Australian Writers Centre, and I'm the founder of it. And when it first started, it was only in Sydney, right? So we only had courses in Sydney, and that was fine. That was great. But one day, and this is a bizarre thing to be interested in, I know, although you'll probably relate because you're a gym junkie. But at the time, I don't know why, but I had a week off, or I had a week where I had a little bit more time for some reason. I can't remember exactly why. And for reasons that defy explanation, because there was a Fitness First near me, like just down the road at the time, I decided I'm going to do every class.
Wow.
As in every class. Of course, it was on twice in a day. I didn't go to the second one, but I wanted to sample every class. Anyway, I was so sore after 3 days, it was ridiculous. That wasn't a good part. But it was immersion, right? Into the way they ran their classes. And they use this program called Les Mills, and, there's all different types, right? There's body attack, body combat, Pilates, this, that, and the other. And then 2 weeks later, I went to Byron for a little holiday or something, and I decided to go to a class. And when you go to a new gym and you go to a new class, you're a bit hesitant because you're not sure if you know what's going on or anything. But I realized that they were doing the exact same songs and moves and everything as they were doing in Sydney. And I was comfortable and it felt familiar, like McDonald's, right? And I had a good time because I didn't feel like an idiot that I wasn't doing things the right way. And I started going down the rabbit hole of Les Mills, who is a former mayor of Auckland and an athlete, and he created his gym there. And oddly, it was the former NRL player Mal Meninga who went there and said, you've got to have these classes in Australia. Anyway, to cut a really long story short, they ended up creating this program where it was the same in every city for those 2 weeks or week or whatever. And that consistency was very familiar to customers, but it also ensured a level of quality and it ensured a level of scale. So they could open gyms all over the place. And that was the beginning of the Australian Writer Centre being in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, and everywhere.
That inspired you to expand? That's amazing.
Yeah, because that was the thing that made me realise that's how I scale. That's how I can scale. It needs to be because it is different. Difficult if you have teachers in every state and they're teaching different things. They're teaching it's not consistent. And when students come through, they may not have learnt the right things, right, to go to the next level. So I thought, okay, this is how I can scale, and that was the seed. And if I didn't go to the gym that week. I would never have gone down that rabbit hole and discovered the business model of this person, right, of the founder of this program. And it sparked certain ways of thinking for me in terms of my own business model. So you might think, oh, the gym, that's got nothing to do with writing courses, right? But I allowed myself to go, this is a really bizarre thing that I want to do this week, because my friends thought I was nuts. And by day 3, I happened to know
you thought you were nuts.
It was crazy. I happened to know a pain management expert at Royal North Shore Hospital, and I told him, and he just said, just take Panadol, because it was silly. But that's one example. But another example, again, the danger is people learn only from people in their industry. And
yes, we are in a bubble. We are in a bubble, all doing the same thing. Yes,
you're learning a set way of thinking. But I really encourage people to learn things outside their industry, or, as I said, just whatever piques their interest. So more recently, you may know there was a show, and don't judge me, anyone, but there was a show called SAS Australia where there was like 4 special forces, ex-special force people who then took a bunch of celebrities off into the wilderness and did a whole bunch of challenges, and, it's a competition and there was a winner. I definitely was interested in this show. I would watch this show. Some people would say that it is like a bogan show and why are you interested in this show? But I was interested and I let myself be interested, okay? And it was just initially pure entertainment value. And, you're seeing people go through challenges. It's kind of interesting, just like Survivor or any of those shows. But then I started thinking about the tasks that they had to do, and I know it's all made up because it's a television show, right? It's not, they're not really in a war zone. They're simulating everything. But I started being interested in the tasks that they had to do and the tasks that the Special Forces people obviously had to do in real life, because I started looking them up and reading their books and stuff like that. And eventually I spoke to one of them. So, one of the stars on the show, like one of the Special Forces guy, and talked more about his background, more in depth than what was in the show, about his work with child trafficking and stuff like that. And I became interested in that. And I became interested in the aftermath of dealing with extreme situations. And because of that, I also started talking to a friend of mine. It's a long story, but there's a rabbit hole, right? Whose son went to Afghanistan and had returned. And unfortunately, everyone in his, cohort or unit had either died or taken their own life. And he was in a very bad space, and she had to basically go and make sure he was okay. And I started marrying kind of things in my brain about the healing power of writing, because these people come back and there's no one to talk to, or they find it difficult to, it's not that there's no one to talk to, of course there's people to talk to, but they find it difficult often to talk to people. But when you write to no one but yourself, you're not being judged by anyone. You're not worried about whether you've written anything good or not. You're only writing for yourself. Anyway, again, to cut a really long story short, that developed into a program that I've developed called Personal Storytelling for Veterans and First Responders. Because I've, since really researched it and talked to lots of veterans and first responders, and because I went down that rabbit hole, I believe I, ended up meeting Sir Peter Cosgrove, General Sir Peter Cosgrove, on a cruise ship of all places, and discussed this with him as well. So there's this program that we have now called Personal Storytelling for Veterans and First Responders, and it's been life-changing for veterans and first responders.
I bet.
So I'm really glad that I watched that show. But in addition to that, we now have a second program for regular civilians, just normal people who want to. It's like an introduction to personal storytelling and memoir, right? So it's spanned 2 courses, and they've become 2 of our most successful courses. But again, if I didn't listen to that, I think I'm going to watch this show secretly, that rabbit hole never would have occurred.
That is fascinating, and I can't imagine the number of lives that have been changed by you going down that rabbit hole, going outside of the way you're normally thinking and doing things that you don't normally do. And you made a really good point before, is that we tend to learn from people in our industry. We become part of a bubble. I know at times I've been part of the digital marketing bubble, and so you're kind of all doing what the other person is doing and pricing yourself similarly, offering similar products and services. I remember we had an events business for many years, as you know, Valerie, because we've known each other for a long time. And when we first started, we were just doing what other events companies were doing. And there came a point where it was, I don't know if you call this curiosity, but I kind of recalled I had worked in the music industry in my 20s and put those things together. Like, what if, rather than doing what other seminar companies are doing, what if we treated our events company like a music label? And what if we represented a few brands, but we did their live events, their merch, had a contract with them, had them exclusive, and that created this boutique events agency. We just put us way ahead of the competition because it was a different way of doing it.
That's great. Yeah, exactly. So that you listened to that thing in your brain that made you think, okay, what if? That is the key word. What if? Right? And sometimes the what if doesn't lead anywhere, but you need to ask the question, because sometimes it does lead to something amazing, including, as you've just described, a whole new business model.
Whole new business model, lucrative. We were sort of treading water before that, and it was really a place where we could escalate. And so sometimes we do need to follow that curiosity, but also sometimes we can become curious by putting ourselves in different environments and being around different people who think differently to us. It doesn't mean they have to be thinking in opposing ways, but just getting out of our little bubble. One of the things that I'm wondering about, Val, is if someone gets curious and they decide to make a big change, like we made a big change in our business model and change of direction, what if people fear losing customers or losing credibility because they've changed lanes?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of things here, because sometimes it is obvious that you should actually change lanes. But sometimes, but you don't know that when you just first feel that initial nudge, right? It's too dramatic to change lanes immediately. But people seem to think that, okay, do I stay or do I pivot? They're not the only 2 choices. But people are just thinking, well, this is what I know, it's safe, I'm going to stay, or I'm going to throw it all away and I'm going to pivot. But really, there's a great middle ground, and that is running them in parallel. And you don't have to give one up in order to try or dip your toe in the water for the other. You don't have to do this dramatic change. You can run things in parallel. And initially, when you're just putting your toe in the water and you're just just sussing things out, you don't necessarily have to share it. You don't necessarily have to, unless you want to, of course, it's completely up to you. I used to share that I watched this show. Who knew the SAS Australia? Who knew that it would lead to something so huge? But you don't have to share it. You can just continue to explore it in the background until you know whether or not it is a thing, if you know what I mean. And then it is okay to run things in parallel if you're still attached to the original one for whatever reason. It could be a financial reason, emotional reason, identity reason, whatever. But it's okay to do both.
Thank you. You've spoken about how we can bring curiosity into our corporate culture. Now, most of the women listening are small business owners. They might have teams of under 15 or 20. How might we approach, as business owners, this curiosity culture within our small businesses?
Firstly, it's got to start with you. And even regardless of your team, I'll talk about team in a second, but it's got to start with you because you need to fundamentally experience and believe that this is a beneficial thing and to allow yourself to open the door to whatever that nudge is. And I think at a simple level, we call it curiosity. Some people already are very intuitive and already listen to their gut. And that's great. You're kind of already there in a sense. But if you're not, it is paying attention to those little things and letting yourself just take that first step of a Google or, just that you don't have to set aside 3 hours. Right. You can just spend 10 minutes Googling because it will either shut it down or pique your interest further. Just those 10 minutes. And the thing is, the biggest mistake that I believe people make is they think, I'll do that later, and then they forget. They do want to do it later, but they don't write it down, or even if they write it down, it stays on the someday list forever. But and the other mistake is people do write it down, they do plan to research it, and honestly, I have had people say, I'll do that in 6 months when XYZ, maybe the kids have finished year 12 or whatever it is, right? And I'm like, you're waiting 6 months to do something that will take 5 minutes? Are you serious?
Yeah.
No. Just do it now, get it over with, you know what I mean? And then it's also not hanging over in your brain.
Yeah, because that occupies space, right? Anything unfinished kind of occupies space. But I kind of understand where they're coming from because it's like, I'm busy right now, I'm overwhelmed. If this takes me down a rabbit hole, I'm going to, go off track. But I love that you said, just do it now because it might actually fuel and inform what you're doing for the next 6 months, right?
Exactly.
This kind of fits into what we talked about earlier, and that is striking the balance between being understood by our audience and not confusing people about who we are. Does that go back to what you said earlier of you don't have to pivot and change, throw everything out and start again? When it comes to our branding and our messaging, I guess what I'm asking is around experimenting and pivoting, but also not confusing our market.
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned initially, you don't have to share everything, right? But then if you do decide to completely pivot and that feels really aligned with what your purpose is and what you want to put out in the world and what you want to be known for, and if you've chosen to pivot, then you've chosen to pivot. You've actually chosen to change, and you need to tell your audience about this, and you need to embody that. The struggle occurs is when you're not fully aligned. The struggle occurs is when you're thinking, oh, should I pivot or should I not? Do you know what I mean? And that's when it becomes difficult. But if you already know you're going to pivot, well, pivot. Tell people that's the end of that kind of thing. But if you're kind of straddling both and you are not sure, then what I would suggest is, number one, if you're truly not sure which direction you're going, I wouldn't, tell the whole world, oh, I'm really uncertain about which direction I'm going. You can tell all of your friends and stuff like that. Sure, of course, to help you. Because what's the point of doing that? But if you've chosen the path of going in parallel and you're aligned with both of those things being part of your life, absolutely. If you're aligned with it, then that's your authentic self. Then that is what is true, and that is what people should know about you, because you know that you want both or however many things in your life. Does that make sense?
It does. It totally makes sense. I remember, Val, and again, you may remember this. You know, we used to be, as long as you're a woman business owner, it didn't matter what size business. If you had an idea for a business, what you did, you could come to us and we would support you through training and mentoring and our events and things. And about 18 months ago, I kept pulling this tug to, like, what if we were just for women with established businesses? If we were just for women with more mature businesses? And the internal battle between, but I'm not going to be helping all the people, and, you know, I don't want to leave people out. You know, I really struggled with it, and I didn't talk publicly about it until, you know, I felt so congruent with it that I know this is the best way that I'm going to help people. There's other people that can help people who just have an idea for a business. But if someone has an established business and they want to grow it, then we are the right place. And what was difficult about that was drawing a line in the sand and saying who we're for and who we're not for, and being willing to polarize, knowing there's a lot more women out there who are just starting a business, or like a much bigger market, than women with established businesses. And it was as much an internal battle as a messaging battle for us when we made that decision.
Yes, but the harder part is the internal battle, right? And so that, because once you've got that, the messaging just happens. So it is very much, you need to be in touch with what is truly happening inside and what you are truly aligned with. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the key you were saying there. It's like totally aligned with, this is who we should be as a company, even though it wasn't who we were. And we've been, you know, I've been doing this year for 30 years. So it's okay to change, you know, and to allow that little seed, which was a seed of curiosity for me. What if we went this direction? I sort of resisted it for a long time. So if you're listening and you are resisting that change, it could be the internal battle, it could be the fear inside, but I want you to be encouraged that amazing things can open up when we take a really aligned action. Now, I know that you have had many reinventions, Valerie, by following your curiosity. Would you let us into maybe the most recent one, if it's not one of the two that you've already given us?
I have realized that because, you know, the conventional wisdom from a personal branding point of view and from a, you know, marketing point of view is, as we've already discussed, to pick a lane. Right. And more recently, in the last few years, I have discovered the world of art. So in my background is as a writer and journalist. I started off as an accountant, and more recently I have followed that curiosity into the world of art. And I kept thinking when I first, you know, started in the world of art, okay, well, and Instagram, just for an example, is obviously a visual medium. Yeah. And I thought, okay, well, let's just allow Instagram to focus on art, because it is, you know, lots of pictures and artwork and stuff like that. And that makes sense, and really put the message out there that it is or that I'm all about art, and to be discovered in that way. And there was a level of imposter syndrome in that, not that the imposter syndrome wasn't actually, oh, am I a good enough artist, or can I put myself out there as an artist? The imposter syndrome was actually, this is not the whole of me. This is, I'm not just an artist. I'm actually interested in all these other things. And more recently, I have put that out there. I've been all of me. I mean, not all of me, but you know what I mean.
I was not ready for that.
But I've been the main facets of me, and it's felt so comfortable and so congruent that it then spawned. I realized that I one of the big parts of me, which you know, actually, is I have this kind of superpower to help people gain clarity on whatever it is happening in their life, or whether it's business or life or whatever, right? And I've realized that, and a lot of people who are stuck, I have this superpower to help them figure out what is the stuckness and what can be done about it. So that has then spawned this direction for me that I'm helping people do a creative reboot if they're stuck, or also if they know that they are ready for the next chapter. I have a program now called the Next Chapter Method for them to determine and implement the steps for their next chapter. So, and that has brought together all of the bits of me, if you know what I mean. And it feels very, very aligned.
That's fantastic. I definitely want to know more about that. And if you're listening and you want to know more about that, then we'll be sure to put something over on the show notes page, bringing in all those experiences, all those careers you've had, all the many people that you met through your journalist days, all the many people that you've met through all the interviews you've done, the presentations you've done. That's fascinating. And yes, I have seen you in action on getting people unstuck and having, like you said, that superpower of helping them see what the stuckness is and move beyond it and being able to really bottom line it in the most wonderful, wonderful way. Someone is listening and they feel like their creative spark has really been dulled by the demands of running and growing a business. What's a small shift that they can make to reconnect with that inner sense of curiosity and creativity? Because my feeling is that if, for those of us, and I've definitely been there, where you're almost numb, you're just going through the motions, you may not even feel curiosity when it comes up because there's just so much heaviness around running the business.
Okay. I am a huge fan for people in that situation and people in general, but particularly when you're in that situation and you feel you just don't know, you're just overwhelmed and you just don't know what to do next. You don't know what to think next. It's like you're in a rut even. I'm a huge fan of journaling, and I've actually created a free download, which is 30 days of creative curiosity, but it's 30 journal prompts. You don't actually have to use my journal prompts. Actually, you can just journal if you're comfortable with it. The journal prompts are there for people who just might want a little bit of guidance. But if you're already comfortable with journaling, you should absolutely do it. Now, the thing is, you don't have to journal for an hour. You don't have to journal for half an hour. You don't even have to journal for 15 minutes. If you are so flat out and you can only journal for 5 minutes, happy days. That's great. Just do it while you have your coffee or while you have your cup of tea or whatever it is. But allow yourself just some time to journal. And if you kind of think, I don't know, my brain is so full, I don't know what to journal, literally write that down.
Yes, got it.
It's astounding what comes out. If you just go, my brain is so full, I really don't know what to write down. Oh my God, I'm so busy today. I have to do this, this, and this, and this. But why isn't this working? Da, da, da. Allow yourself the thing that's usually going on in your brain, but it's all mixed up in your brain because there's so many other things in your brain. Using a pen and a piece of paper, or you can do it on the computer if you want, but I tend to think that it's better, written down. Use that exercise really, really, really helps you distill what's really happening in your brain. And you got to make sure you understand no one's reading this apart from you. So it doesn't have to be beautiful. It doesn't have to be fantastic sentences and stuff like that. But it is the ultimate expression of what is truly inside you, especially if you could, remind yourself no one else is reading it. And whenever I have any level of uncertainty or indecision, or I'm a bit confused about something, this is a surefire way for me to distill, maybe not everything, but certainly the next step.
Love it. That's the 30 Days of Creative Curiosity, a free journaling guide. We're going to put a link to that in the show notes. I am an on-off journaler. I'll go through periods where I journal and then I go dry for a long time, but I'm very inspired to again, with your suggestion, it doesn't have to be a half hour in the morning that I have to journal, just something, and using these prompts. So have a look at our show notes. I'll tell you where you can find those in just a few minutes, and go ahead and download the 30 Days of Creative Curiosity. As you know, Valerie, our tagline here at Her Business is do what you love every day. Right, bringing that into our life and into our business. So give us a glimpse of what it looks like in a day in the life of Valerie Khoo when you are doing what you love.
Okay, well, generally in the morning, I do this thing which is, I know this sounds boring, but it's not. It's actually really satisfying and really productive. And I used to do it because I used to go out with my cat and do it in a cafe, but he's gone to heaven now. But it's still a really great exercise, and that is I process my emails. But what that means is not only do I process my emails and answer like messages like on Slack or whatever, I get that done in the morning, and that's why it is quite easy for me to achieve inbox zero. Of course, that goes out the window a little bit when you're traveling, but let's say you're not traveling. I process everything and I answer all the queries kind of thing.
Okay. And you do that in the morning only?
I still answer some things during the day, of course, but there's usually a chunk in the morning, right? And that kind of sets me up for the day, because I've also I also use that time to plan the day, or sorry, not to plan today, plan the things that I need to get done that day. And so then these days I then go to the gym, and so I feel good when I come back, and then I'm ready for deep work. Now, that deep work might be, depending on what's happening, a project with the Australian Writers' Centre, or it might be finishing a large-scale floral painting. So it depends on the day, and they both bring me joy. So I'll just do whatever it is that's either deadline-driven or is calling me that day. But the thing that sets me up for the day is that morning thing that I do.
That's so interesting. I love that. Because some people are like, well, do the deep work first, because that's the most important thing. But, it's finding what that groove is for us, right? And for you, that's what keeps you productive, is doing the admin morning and then moving into your deeper work, because your brain's decluttered. You're not wondering if there's answered emails or loose ends, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, that's so interesting.
And you set a time limit.
You set a time limit to get done.
Yeah, okay. There was when it developed was when my cat Rocky, there was a point where he'd get restless, and I just knew.
That's how much time you had. I love it. Was that one coffee's worth or two coffees worth of time? Before Rocky got restless. That is so funny. Hey, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for always being such an inspiration within our community, and certainly to me, and for sharing your love of and inspiration for more curiosity. Thank you, Val.
My absolute pleasure.
That, my friends, was the wonderful Valerie Khoo. And like I said, I'll drop a link to Valerie's 30 Days of Creative Curiosity in the show notes for this episode, and I'll tell you where they are in just a moment. But I want to take a minute to appreciate Valerie's outlook today, because the topic of curiosity really ties into what we've been talking about over the last few episodes of this show, about rediscovering ourselves, reconnecting with what we truly want out of life and business. And I think the first step of that process does start with curiosity. It starts with remembering the little things we love, the things that spark us. Maybe it's something you would never expect to turn into something. Maybe it's nothing to do with profitability, like Valerie's example of watching that survival show, or perhaps an old interest that you've forgotten about. Tuning into that interest is a key part to not just exploration and inspiration, but it's a key part to you having more joy in your life. And I think so often we get into the repetitive groove of daily life and daily business, and we get stuck in the structure and the formulas and the plans and the hacking it and the 10xing it. We need all that in business, but we can also pair it with curiosity, with our interests, with the silly things in life that draw our attention, no matter how unrelated they may be to our business. They are still a part of us. Those things give us the inspiration to create differently, to build our businesses differently, as you heard me and Valerie talk about, to give to our clients in a different way. And we can embrace our individual uniqueness or our curiosities and use them to both better ourselves and in turn our businesses. This is such a great topic. And at the end of the interview, we did mention that sometimes it can be hard to tap into that creativity and that curiosity again when you've been pushing it off for so long. But there are ways to tune back into that sense of curiosity and creativity, those parts of yourself that may be dormant right now. Now, one of the tools that we have for you that Valerie has so generously made available is the downloadable guide called the 30 Days of Creative Curiosity. It's a great guide to get you back into that creativity. It gives you the prompts to start thinking differently and to reconnect with that true unique part of you. And I've got a link to that in the show notes. I'll give you the details in just a moment. But here's what I want to know. What rabbit holes are you going to explore? What random interests will you open the door to? How will you prioritize curiosity in your life? I would love to hear from you. And you can continue this conversation directly with me over on Instagram. Just find us at @herbusiness and go ahead and send me a direct message. And of course, these are the sorts of conversations, the big conversations that we have all the time inside of the Her Business Network. So if you're not a member and you're listening here, head over herbusinessnetwork.com and learn more about how you can join us. Now, one of the things that I love to do is to celebrate women who are acknowledging of the work that we do to put together this show. And DC Indigo left a review about episode 301, which was an interview with Dr. Olivia Ong. It was a great interview about resilience and burnout and the power of self-compassion. And here's what DC Indigo said. She said, "Thank you, Susie and Olivia, for the recent episode on burnout and the advice on the importance of slowing down to speed up and how important self-care is to being productive." I'm going to put a link to that episode inside of our show notes so that you can check it out. And you will find the highlights of today's episode, a link to Valerie's resource, and a link to the episode I just mentioned over at herbusiness.com/313. That's herbusiness.com/313. Be sure to download Valerie's fabulous 30 Days of Creative Curiosity. Now, if you're new to the show and you don't already subscribe, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can catch the upcoming episodes. We love doing this show for you, and I'd love it if you would join me right here next time on the Her Business Podcast. Bye for now.